Okay, today we learned to write linear equations as functions. So we're going to determine if a relation is a function, identify the domain and range of a function, and then write the linear equation in function notation. So to write a linear equation as a function, the first thing you'll do is determine if the relation is a function. And we'll do this by doing the VLT, that stands for the vertical line test. So we look on a graph, if we have something like this, we use that vertical line to determine if it's a function, because this only passes through that graph once. At any place on the graph, that would be a function. However, if we took that purple and we flipped it sideways and then drew our vertical line, we would see that it passes through more than one, so that is not considered a function. So the first step is to determine if it's a function. The second step is to identify the slope and the y-intercept, and you should be able to pick those out by using the graph. And then step 3, we will use slope-intercept form and replace the y value with f of x, and then that will be what's known as function notation. And then last, you'll identify the domain and range. So here's our relation. We have to determine if it's a function. It does pass the vertical line test at any point on the graph, so we can say yes, it's a function. So I'm just going to write function. Yes. Next, we are going to identify the slope and the intercept. The intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, so if we follow along, we can find at this point right here, it crosses. So that's our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is at +3, and then we're going to use that point to find our slope, and we're going to find the next nicest point along this line. So it looks like about right there is the nicest point, and then we're going to count. This says we have to go down 2 and back 1. So for our slope, we would say down.
Miss Nay, Mr.
Sorry, there's a little announcement going on there. So our slope here is -2 over -1, and because they're both negative, we write it as positive, and you can either leave it as 2 over 1 or just as 2. And then we go to our y equals mx plus b form. We're going to replace what we can with the y. We're going to replace that with f of x to write it in function notation. We replace the m with 2, and we replace the intercept with 3. And then the last thing we have to do is we have to state the domain. The domain can be looked at different ways. If we put values in for x, is there any value we cannot put in for x? In this case, we can put negatives, we can put positives, we can put fractions, we could put whatever we want in for x. So here we would say all real numbers. For the range, this says whatever we put in for x, what can we get out of our function? And because we can put whatever we want in for x, it means that it's going to change this part of the value to be different values, and it just means that our range is going to be positive values, it could be negative values, so we're going to say all real numbers. Remember, when I write the double R like this, it stands for reals, real numbers. Okay, again, we will start with determining if it is a function, and we can see that it passes a vertical line test. So we can say, yeah, a function. Yes. Then from here, we're going to identify the slope and the y-intercept. I like to start by finding the y-intercept first, so I go along this line until it passes the y-axis, and so it looks like right there it passes the y-axis, and that's at -1. And then I'm going to use that point, and I'm going to say I'm going to go to the next nicest point on the line, and it looks like about right there. And then I'm going to count that. That says we have to go down 1 and over 2. So down 1 and over 2 is my slope. Then I write it into the equation y equals mx plus b, except I use f of x. and I replace the m with -1/2 and the intercept with -1, so you can either write plus -1 or just -1. And then we have to identify domain and range last. Remember, domain says what values can we put in for that x, and if it doesn't matter what we put in for x, like we could put positive numbers, negative numbers, if we can put whatever we want in there, then we can say domain will be all reals. Your range refers to what you get out of the function. So if we can put whatever we want in for x, then that means we could probably get positive numbers here, negative numbers here, so that will then say that we get all reals for our range. Alright, that should help you with your assignment 6-4, writing linear equations as functions. Good luck.